During a very strong gale of almost hurricane force, which continued all night, the bark AC Bean, a Norwegian laden from North America, went ashore on the rock about 1 mile east of Malin Head and went to pieces. Out of her crew of 10 men, only 2 were saved.
During a gale of wind from the northwest, the schooner Mary Ann of Liverpool from that port on the 6th of November 1882, bound to Heart's Content, Newfoundland, D.B. Clark, master, was driven ashore at Lag Bar, Strawbriga Bay near Malin Head, laden with sofas, couches,
February the 24th, 1878. The boat Ellen of Innistrahall with 3 men was lost while returning from Malin Head to the island. The names of the men were Michael McLaughlin and his son James McLaughlin and Daniel McLaughlin. The island of Innistrahall lies 6 miles north of the coast of Donegal.
The moon shines on the isle of Innistrahall, bejeweling nuptial tinted herring gull, mayfly dancing in the balmy air, and moth returning to his daylight lair. A shoal of herring breaking out at sea sparkle like hoarfrost on an aspen tree, spindrift in the shaded rocky cleft, and raised beach quartz that the ice ages left. The droning beetles seek the creviced walls to dive into when hungry lapwing calls. Earwigs, likewise, into earthed homes, and red ants under scarred lichen stones. An otter seeking rest on rock remote glistens with phosphorescence on his coat. The snail arboreum with his watery glue, and bunch of pearlwort in a crystal dew. The flaming sun ascends o'er Cantyre's mull, flings out his arms. Day breaks on Innistrahall.
Cosa Fatta.
Paul Jas.
Every rock, every little creek has its name.
Carrig Anya agus Culla Moor.
Scariff, Port na Haia,
Croc na Haile,
Bain na Hibbe,
Awan na Garabal, Sciarta Jommi,
Yagan,
Mullen,
Port the Hurry,
Carrig Bo.
The Innistrahall names were given by people who once lived here, but that was 40 years ago. Now there's no one left except the lightkeepers. From sunrise to sunset and on into the night, they hear the sound of seabirds.
Morning, Skipper.
Morning, Eugene.
That's nice sort of a morning.
It's not bad, no cottage steer. Nice
Yeah.
sunshine.
What time did you start?
About 4:30.
I heard you starting, but I didn't hear you starting like that.
It was doubtful for a while, you know, and about 3:30.
What's your breakfast?
Sausages. Rashes or you eat the last of them.
And the text, SAK required for elite Jew, 17th instant.
The radio gives routine orders, observations, facts about the weather elsewhere, messages. Gives a contact with other people.
Okay, Jackie. I'll just give a repeat on that. Lighthouse Dublin 1500/14, and the text, SAK required for elite Jew 17th instant, and signed PK Torian. Over.
Innistrohull Lighthouse is a new one, as lighthouses go. The oldest in the lighthouse service is the one on the Hook, at the mouth of the Waterford estuary. A fire has been shown here since the 5th century. St. Dovon lit it, monks tended it, and Normans and private contractors, on until the Irish Lighthouse Service took it over.
Didn't see you come back.
The oil tanks are solemnly grouped in a circular stone chamber. The monks' cells opened off it. It's pumped as high as this. Afterwards, it has to be carried up when the night supply has been drawn off for the light. The monastic building still exists at this level with its pointed arches. You could imagine light-keeping to be descended from something very ancient, the tending of a flame, the guarding of it. And though the keepers lead strange, quiet, withdrawn lives, they see it quite unemotionally as a job. So many hours on, so many off, so many days of leave. But even if it is a machine-minding job, it has its rituals. Though many lights are being electrified, here the oil is brought up every day and poured into the tank for the vapor lamp. The Hook is one of the stations round the coast, all owned and administered by the Commissioners of Irish Lights. Its importance is obvious. The land is the danger. Shelving down and making a tide race mentioned in the sailing directions. Shore stations have dwellings for families attached to them. Families have lived on islands and even rocks like this one. It was demolished in a terrible storm in 1881. But even here, children were born and lived, ring-bolt babies tethered to iron rings.
How much is that dog in the window? That one with that white tail. I hope that doggy is for sale.
In cities, children draw houses. They draw lighthouses at St. John's Point, County Down. With families, and especially with children, living at the light, life isn't as lonely as elsewhere. Nowadays, after a certain age, the education of children decides whether a keeper has his family with him. The children must be able to get away to school. Necessarily, lighthouses are built on the extremities of the land.
A lone tower, the lighthouse rises solidly on a wave-washed rock. And the man who walks the balcony in prescribed circuit, round and round, counts the railings uprights, cross pieces, to pass his hours of watch away, with never room to make a change, but pace and stop, retrace and pace, along a single narrow track, not side to side or to and fro, confined within the muret's range, a type of roofless iron cage, while here and there, with beady eyes, the grey gulls watch him move around. In disdain spread their wings or swim. Free as the tidal currents run, the choice is theirs. He has no choice, impounded by the catwalk's rim. No wonder then, deep in his heart, the hunger of suppressed desire, and in his eyes the smouldering fire as in the tigers in the zoo, which, racked for sleep, slow pads a pit, linking the gap between the two.
The loneliness of rocks and islands has been lessened since the experimental helicopter service began. From Castletown Bure, a helicopter can relieve 5 rock stations in a single day, although a landing from an Irish Lights tender's boat might be impossible. But the helicopter can't do the tender's work with heavy engine parts, stores, fuel and water, and the lifting and replacing of buoys. Bull Rock, West Cork. The helicopter drops onto its pad at the top of this pinnacle. But to get up here after a sea landing that can be difficult is a matter of going up more than 200 steps. A lighthouse identifies a place on a chart by its prescribed light by night, fixed or regularly flashing, by day by its markings. If it has a radio beacon, then a bearing can be taken on the signal regularly transmitted. Loop Head in County Clare sends LP. When a ship's radar scanner questions a lighthouse fitted with Raycon, an unmistakable flash on the screen shows its position. The height of a lighthouse provides a vertical angle, and so the ship's distance from it. This is observed by sextant. At the same time, a bearing is taken. This information, transferred to a chart, gives the position of a ship.
Quartermaster. 349, sir. Coming over to 349, sir. 349, she's on, sir.
When fog cuts down the prescribed limits of visibility, when it begins to come in thick, the air compressors to work the sirens and diaphones are started.
Just about oil up.
Like all other machinery in the Irish Lights, the compressors are doubled in case of failure.
It looks pretty thick at the moment. It's a small white coaster.
Small coaster, yes.
I suppose she'll want to pilot.
She will.
You want to get on the...
On the...
She's no VHF.
No, get on the landline.
Get on the landline.
Soon as... Port operations, as soon as possible.
Once the smouldering cartridge goes into the cylinder head, the start is very quick. This stylus will record every blast of the signal right through the fog watch. And 30 seconds later. 30 seconds later.
The Bull Rock.
St. John's Point, County Down.
The Bailey Lighthouse.
Dunleera.
And on the East Pier at Dunleary, a warning bell nearly 120 years old is still on standby. Other stations, like the Hook, have signals that are less automated. Explosive fog signals, a flash and an explosion every 5 minutes. Between explosions, the keeper on fog watch gets the next cartridge ready. The wire is hitched on to make a sort of sling. The cartridge is slung outside the tower, and the wires that will detonate it are connected. The arm is hoisted out until the explosive is safely away from the building. One fog signal every 5 minutes on the ting of this clock. This light, the Hallboland Lighthouse in Carlingford Lough, is an experiment in complete automation. The attendant lives ashore with his family, in sight of it and connected to it by radio signals. There's no one in the tower, but when the attendant signals a question, the machine in the tower automatically selects the appropriate recorded answer, given in the voice of the firm that manufactures it.
This is the automatic dataphonic equipment at Home Bowline Lighthouse. Stand by for statements of conditions at Home Bowline Lighthouse. The main light is off. The air receiver pressure is normal. Send control signal now.
The Irish Light Service is also responsible for marker buoys that indicate channels or the extremities of sandbanks and reefs. They're constantly rolled around and washed by the sea, but even so they collect seaweed, mussels and limpets. Their identifying colours and markings fade, and so they have to be replaced and brought ashore for overhaul. Buoys have different meanings and identities, and they can be distinguished by shape, top marks, colours and names. This buoy yard is in Dunleera, in the Irish Light Service Depot. This is the centre of everything technical connected with lighthouses, lightships, buoys, and the attendant ships or tenders. The stores that have been requested are assembled here to be delivered round the coast by sea.
1 packet, 4 eggs.
Yes.
A packet, toilet rolls.
Check.
1 packet, 10 dozen box of matches.
No. Just a minute now. Yes, we have it.
1 bag of washing soda.
Check.
There's everything here, from the traditional needle to an anchor, by way of domestic requirements, up to fridges and television sets.
1 packet, a garden fork and spade.
Check.
1 packet, 2 galvanized buckets.
On the upper floors,
No.
everything connected with the light is serviced and tested. Mr. McCarthy is well into his 80s, but he's keen-eyed enough to do delicate work without spectacles. The paraffin burner must hiss for a certain number of hours, the colour and evenness of the flame must be checked, and the fuel consumption. Gradually, electricity is taking over as a source of light. When the original burner from an electrified lantern comes back to this depot, where it was assembled and sent out, and brought back for overhaul and sent out again over the years, it is finally parted, but parted with regret. Even if it's old-fashioned, there's far more visible fine workmanship in the brass parts than in an electrified lantern. They're put away. They aren't scrapped because they're old, they're kept. There are delicate instruments in this room, instruments on test, instruments always duplicated. Lights here for boys that mustn't fail, and they're the most roughly treated lights in the service. The flashes are tested in this very quiet instrument room before the lamp is sent out again to face a stormy winter in a channel.
Two romantic, one-time navigational aids that the commissioners have in their care are the metal men. This one, a huge painted statue of an early 19th century sailor, pointed the sailing master away from the dangers of being embayed off Tremor. His brother at Ross's Point still shows the channel to ships going up to Sligo.
Any ship, no matter what its nationality, that secures in a port in the British Isles has had the benefit of one or more of the lighthouse services, and in the dues that every ship pays are light dues. These are collected and distributed in proportion to the stations they administer, to the Northern Lighthouse Board for Scotland and the Isle of Man, Trinity House for England and Wales, and for Ireland, North and South, the Irish Lights Commissioners.
The service was first administered by the Ballast Board in Dublin, but when it became independent over 100 years ago, it was moved to D'Olier Street, and today it's here in Pembroke Street. This is the controlling centre, and the commissioners hold a board meeting here every Friday.
I beg to report the following incident involving this vessel's boats. At 08:28 hours today, the tug Hardenveld was heard blowing her whistle for assistance. It was observed that her engines had broken down and that she and the dumb hopper W. Backme Holland, Hardingveld, were drifting onto the shore south of Dinish Island and about 300 feet east of the privateer Rock. You have that from the chart, Captain Coleman. The starboard motorboat was lowered, took a line from the tug, and towed tug and hopper away from the shore. The port motorboat, which was already in the water, then proceeded to the scene. It took the tug in tow, which cast off the hopper. The starboard boat then towed the hopper into the inner harbour and made her fast alongside the dredger, which was moored there. The port boat towed the tug and similarly made it fast alongside the dredger. An offer of money was made by the tugmaster to the boat's coxswain, but this was refused. The wind was southwest force 3 at the time.
The premises are new, but the commissioners brought the past with them.
The inspector says a certain degree of skill must have been required to maneuver the vessels through the narrow harbour entrance and into a safe berth, using boats not hired for this type of work. I recommend, therefore, that the commander and crew of ILTI Ernie be commended for the prompt action taken, the skill shown, and the success of the operation.
Now that part is easy enough. That is noted and approved. But I think the question of salvage has now got to be raised. I can't see you can avoid it. The crew are entitled to salvage.
A developing radio network means that the inspectors can get in touch directly with the lighthouses and lightships.
Yes, I think I know what that's about. All right, I'll ring him when I get my office. Thank you.
Hello? Kish Lighthouse? Oh, good day, Captain Strange. Yes, I was ringing you there some time ago. Yes. Yes. Yes, well, the number 1 Kish buy is now functioning correctly.
The Kish, the latest and greatest of lighthouses, with a helicopter platform on top. This concrete tube rises on the Kish bank. It was built in Dunleary harbour and floated out to be sunk on the bank at the approaches to Dublin Bay. When it was in position, the tower was raised to its full height of 94 feet, like a telescope being drawn out. This is the lighthouse of the future, for as long as manned lighthouses last. The hoist, swinging and spinning, brings stores to the entrance, and then they're lowered again, some of them to the underwater magazine. The Kish has a light, an explosive fog signal, 2 forms of radio telephone, a radio beacon and a radar beacon. Life isn't like life in other lighthouses. Not a patch of grass round it. No intervening protecting rock, no fishing. Just a concrete tube rising out of the water. But it's tested to stand up to gusts of 120 miles an hour. On one platform there's a lifeboat and life raft for emergencies. An entirely different life begins now in different surroundings. No graceful ornament, no pleasant iron railings, no fluted granite column. But fresh air flows through the tower in pipes to man and machine. The machines can announce trouble to any part of the building. Life is divided into levels. And then the relief. 1 man to go, 1 to join. The Irish Lights tenders Atlanta, Isolde, Ione, and the New Granuaile are constantly at sea, constantly attending to lighthouses. Their speed and efficiency in getting their boats away and inboard again comes of long practice and operations that are repeated several times a day.
Yes, okay.
This time, a lightship is being relieved, the Gannet on the Arklow bank. This time there's a difference. More men are due for relief out of a light vessel's crew of a master and 7 men than would be out of the Kish. And also, Atlanta has to pump fresh water over to her. Atlanta approaches from astern to catch a line floated down to her from the lightship. Here again, ship handling and deck work are the calm and easy result of long habit. When Atlanta is secured to the lightship, the business of passing over the freshwater hose begins. Sometimes in bad weather it's not possible to carry out this maneuver, but today it's easy. This light vessel has a light, radio and fog signal. It warns of a sandbank, like the Kish. Maybe one day it'll be replaced by a concrete tube. With the crew of 8, there's more company than on the Kish and more opportunities for exercise in a straight line. She's a ship, but she's anchored, and each man's 4 weeks in her is a voyage to nowhere. Speed again in hoisting up the boats. The men relieved have trains and buses to catch, maybe to the other side of the country. For a man may be stationed anywhere, though the question of his children's schooling may influence this. One day, each one of these men will be looking at the tender's wake for the last time, going into retirement at 60. One of these retired men is D.J. O'Sullivan. We've heard some of his verse. He's a naturalist. For him, a wasp's nest is something for observation, not for distraction. He inherited his interest in birds and insects from his father and grandfather, and he developed it during his service. He lives by the sea at Carratrasna, County Donegal, married to a pilot's daughter. He lives within sight and sound of the Inishowen Lighthouse. Below him is historic water. Columkill and his monks passed this way, rowing out to exile in Iona. In 1689, the Mountjoy sailed up here to break the boom at Derry and break Ireland's hopes as well. It saw the dazzle-painted ships of the 14 War and the ships of the last war and the Atlantic bombers from Ballykelly. It's the mouth of the Foyle. He retired here, and he wrote of his retirement with some bitterness.
The laws of redundancy bind my late years with the tangled tapes of enforced retirement. Self-esteem smothered beneath pension papers. Public oblivion. A living death. At 18, join the Navy and see the world. Hoary 65, a pilgrim denied destiny. Looking back, I remember the Ark Royal, Isolde, Titanic, and now I look at myself.
It's a lighthouse service family, brothers and sons. Eugene on Innistra Hull, Donal, he's on the Firstnet, and Hugh, serving on the Old Head of Kinsale. They send him movies from the various stations, lighthouse pictures. He assembles them and shows them to his wife and daughter. In his house, he has some of the things made in a keeper's spare time. Nowadays, a lot of it goes in watching television. A lampstand decorated with shells. A ship in a bottle. This is a surviving craft. He served on Tory Island, and this is a primitive painting by James Dixon, who didn't start until he was 84 and died recently. A well-observed record of his surroundings. There's little nostalgia and no bitterness in his life now. He's written a book of poetry, and he has another in preparation. He paints, illustrations for the nature articles he's been writing for years. He contributes regularly to a daily newspaper. Daniel O'Sullivan's father. He served on the Bull Rock off West Cork, this gloomy stone mountain pierced by an arch, and he was lost off it. These words were written on the rock more than 50 years ago.
July 1917. At 8 p.m. summertime, Assistant Keeper Sullivan left mess room to go fishing. At 8:45 p.m., lamp was lighted and fog signal started, the marks being obscured. Principal Keeper McCaig at engine and Assistant Keeper Haggerty at light. 9:15 p.m., fog cleared. At about 10 p.m., Sullivan not having returned, McCaig went on Pier Head. Not seeing Sullivan on either northeast or southeast point, temporarily went down to north side and McCaig to southeast, but could not see him. Returned to mess room. As he was not there, temporarily went to lantern. Temporary informed Haggerty, who was on watch there, that Sullivan could not be found. Temporary remained in lantern. Haggerty and McKeag immediately went down north side and made a thorough search. Some fish were found where they were not usually put, but no trace of Sullivan. Returned to mess room at midnight. McKeag and Haggerty again left mess room with lantern and also rope. They made a thorough search round rock. No trace of him could be found. Returned to mess room at 4 a.m.
A simple record, still filed away in Dublin. The man was missed, the search was made, the watch was maintained, but the man was lost. He wasn't taken by the sea. The sea doesn't take. The sea is unique, like death. It may strike and destroy, but it does it without passion. It can be calm and smiling and beneficent, but that's without volition. The fish that swim below are more sentient than their terrible element. It's blind. Left alone, it has no danger. Where the sea meets the land, there is danger. The land is the danger. The lights are the warning of land. At sunset, the lights are readied.